Okay, good evening, class. I would want to thank you for logging in, and thank you for being patient for us to follow through. Yes, we need to finish up the analysis component, and also one more item, that is, because we found that our counterparts, our other lecturers on the other side, have already gone up to chapter 10. So it will be to your disadvantage when we set questions in your exam and you find that you didn't have the notes, you didn't cover them, that was not covered, yet we're expecting you to have covered it. So we want to finish up on the analysis and validation. And there are some tools we are going to look at on Friday afternoon that concern this particular chapter. So please kindly get to the next stream. I don't know. Yes, I see Teddy is here. I do not know if either the class president of the next class is around. Should we give them some more time, or are they logging in? We need to communicate to them somehow. Okay. So by end of this class, we want to look at digital forensic analysis and validation. So by end of this class, we would want to cover the following. One, it should be quite short. We want to determine what data to analyze within digital forensic investigation. We will explain the tools that can be used in validating data, and also explain some common data hiding techniques. And we shall see in the common data hiding techniques, that's where we shall see its methodology known as steganography. And so we shall look at steganalysis, and also by Friday, we should be able to look at the steganography tools that we use. That's the steganalysis tools that are used within handling data digital forensics. So to begin with, we want to determine what data to collect and what data to be analyzed. We had covered a number of these key issues, but we shall still go through them. When we examine and analyze any digital evidence, it depends on the nature of investigation that you're having. The amount of data you're going to process is key, because we said that even the amount of the size of the image you're collecting is important. Making the rightful choice of the tools that you're going to use is important. Okay, I see Apollo inquiring. Doctor, what was this question? Okay, there's a question is meaning about who are people, internal or external? Apollo, we will get time and we will go through these. Is that clear? Because we want to hear also from the viewers, what do they think, who are people? We'll want to hear who are your stakeholders that you deal with, whether for the organization, those are internal or external, those who are outside the organization. Okay, so when we are examining any digital forensics, the nature of what you're investigating is important. And of course, the size, that's the amount of data you're processing, is key. We always recall that there is always a scope creep. In a scope creep, this always means that you end up expanding your scope or the size of your original investigation description. If your original description was to cover 2 areas, you find yourself going into 5 areas, 6 areas. That means there was a scope creep. Something creeped in. Before you knew it, you had to go to another department because it somehow interlinked with the information you picked from one department. So these are reasons as to why there is always a scope creep. Because of unexpected evidence found, you will find that, okay, you now bring in some, I don't know if you've ever been in an investigation. As this afternoon I was coming from investigating, we're carrying out an investigation on some students, some guild that failed to provide accountability to its members. And so an investigation took place, and true, they found that the guild members have to pay back this money to the guild account, depending on the investigation. But the moment they mention something, you will find that, yes, we need to now go to another officer. We need to go to another office because the scope demands that we now go to that other office. So the kind of evidence that you provide is what will tell us to go to beyond what were told us to stop at this place, cover this, cover the other. Attorneys may ask investigators to examine other areas just to recover more evidence. It may actually also be as a result of the attorney. Remember, we said it's the attorneys that will give us how far we go. However, when they realize, there is need for more evidence, it's okay for them to tell you, kindly go ahead to the next level, pick this information. It usually increases the time and resources needed to extract and analyze and present this evidence. Yes, that is true. It's as a result of this scope creep that can be caused by the need to get some more unexpected evidence, and also the need for the investigators to recover, the attorneys to give us authorization to pick up more information. So that always finds that your budget is affected and your time is always affected. Our scope creep has become more common. Why? Because criminal investigators require more detailed examination of evidence just before trial. So to be able to help prosecutors fend off attacks from defense attorneys, you will find that there'll always be that scope creep where people will be, you'll have to go beyond the normal, beyond what you had planned to cover. New evidence isn't revealed to prosecution until when you've been given the proper procedures, which we say those are procedures, are the authorization that comes from the custody in terms of how we're following the custody in which you're going to follow our reporting process. Otherwise, you pick it, you keep it until when it is officially needed. How do we approach dictoforensic cases? We always start with a plan. We begin with creating an investigation plan. Within the plan, we define the goal and the scope. We get the materials needed and the tasks to be performed. The approach we take depends largely on the type of case we're investigating, whether it is civil, whether it's corporate, whether it is criminal. It's up to the type of case that will demand for whatever type of investigation. Again, sometimes you may go into too much investigation and you find there is nothing you pick. The officers were doing their work normally, and so it was required of them to make some of those decisions. In such a case, you package it and exonerate the person. And that's why many times they say a suspect is not one is innocent until when proved guilty. So it's not always that we are always witch hunting. Yes, you're guilty, no. Of course, here they're giving us 10 steps that we follow when carrying out investigation. But again, remember the life cycle. We will classify these and take them to our life cycle. Number one, we need to identify our target drives. We use recently wiped media that has been reformatted and inspected for viruses. That's where you're going to create your images from. So number one, what are they saying? Your drives that they're looking out for are in the preparation stage, as well as at your identification stage at the criminal side, or the person who they are reporting, that person who they're suspecting or company. Still, number two takes place at the user side, within the investigation. There must be an inventory of hardware on the suspect's computer, and note the kind of conditions of the seized computers and any storage device. All these still happen within the identification phase. Number three, we now go to acquisition. For static acquisition, we need to remove the original drive, check the date time of the computer's CMOS, record how we acquired this data from the suspect's drive. So you will see that 3 and 4 take place in our acquisition phase. So these steps in no way are changing the life cycle that we saw that has our key core steps that we are going to cover as we see. Number 5, we process the drive content methodically and logically. We list all files and folders on the image of the drive. We examine the content of the file in all the folders, recover the file content for all password protected. These are still at acquisition stages. Acquisition stages go all the way from number 4, number 3, 4, all the way to number 8. Let's see number 9. Identify the functions of which executable files that does not match the hash values. Still, that is within checking of integrity, if you recall very well, as to how we use our regshot is to help us check for integrity. As to how we use our hash values, these are also to help us to test for integrity. So 10, we maintain the control of all evidence and the findings. This is what happens now within the analysis phase. We refine and modify our investigation plan. If the initial plan is sound, you may need to deviate from it and follow for evidence. Diverting from it and following evidence is what we are calling the scope creep. The scope changes at any time depending on where evidence would need to be picked, depending on how the story changes, how evidence appears. All these affect the evidence and the storyline that we are following. So knowing the type of data we are looking for is helpful in saving our time. The key is to start with a plan and remain flexible, such that as we face new evidence, we see that it fits within our plan. OS Forensics. Friday, we need to install this OS Forensics. I'll kindly request you get downloading this OS Forensics. We've spoken a lot about it. I said on this computer I was not able to get it. I'll get another one that we will have this OS Forensics for to be able to study it within our time as well. So using our OS Forensics to analyze data is very important. We will see that there are several other tools that one can use. However, OS Forensics can perform most of this forensic analysis. For example, if you're having a Microsoft FAT12 or FAT16 or FAT32, we remember differentiating between FAT and NTFS. Whether you're using a Mac or Linux, you should be able to still use it. It is very user-friendly. And I think that's why it has gained lots of popularity, and its price as well is continuously increasing. I'll request us to install it so at least we use it for the next 30 days and practice as much as we can. Do some forensic investigation on some quick core basics. OS Forensics can analyze data from several sources, including those that come from different vendors. It also includes being able to mount any utilities, which can have access to different formats. You remember the formats we covered in chapter 6? Yes, there are raw files, expert witnesses, we have advanced forensic formats, AFF, smart files, VMware images, VHD images. All these different formats are all available. We can use the NIST software also, that is the National Software Reference Library, in also being able to make several images. What are they saying? Not only is OS Forensics there, but there are several other tools that the National Institute of Science and Technology Software Reference Library is able to give us several tools. So, and of course, what is the core there is that whatever tools you use should be ISO certified, because if they're not internationally accepted and identified, it becomes a challenge for you to present them as evidence. We use the index features in OS Forensics. Here are the OS Forensics indexes. They have text data so that you can perform any searches, that giving us an idea on how we carry out the analysis. So under the indexes, it's where we carry out our analysis. And in our analysis, what happens? You already have your image, you mount your image, and you're able to start reading through the information that you get. Of course, they're saying we follow any steps that are on page 5, that's page 5 specifically of this chapter 9 within the textbook I shared with you in the guide towards digital forensic investigation. So there are quite a number of steps if you're to use it, but we shall look at it manually. They're giving us an example here, and of course we shall come to this on Friday when we are looking at it. We're saying for step 1, we need to first of all look at what type of files are we trying to index. Under index, we click start and we go to index. Create index is what helps us start our analysis. That's step 1. It's a kind of print screen. So we use the predefined email files, so file types. Are they emails? Are they Office documents and PDFs? Are they attachments? Are they web? Any document in whatever format. If you feel that even the others which they didn't uncheck, you check them, zip files, images, it's okay. Specify as much detail as your scope would tell you what you're looking for. It will give us an output, that is a search of the index. It will return to us every word or PDF document or any other document that we have said we are looking for. So one by one, we shall keep searching for these items and making sure that we index them properly until we get the rightful item we are looking for. Once you pick the one you need, this is like an email they were searching for. An email they're looking for was from Martha. So saying Martha will be available for public release soon. I don't know, from so and so, we have something. Maybe if that is the email you were looking for, you double click it and it opens. So When you're validating forensic data, it's very key that we ensure that the integrity of data is collected. The integrity of data collected is essential for presenting evidence in court. And of course, we've already seen that we have two ways of creating these inventories, this testing the integrity. One, using RegShot as a tool. Also, we'll see under OS Forensics, we use the hash values to help us creating the integrity. Why? We want to see that really we have not gone and created an email for ourselves. And you're just trying to pin someone, yet it's you who has just intentionally come up with your own, and you're doing it with a bad, you want to make their life difficult. You want to arrest them. Most forensic tools offer hashing for image files. That one we said very well, it's the hash values. The moment we run and they change, that means that there is something, integrity check fails. And so the court will not believe that kind of result. You and me will have changed these results. So if you're using whichever tool, whether it is ProDiscover, you make sure you load this image, you run the hash values, and here they're explaining in this point. Let me highlight it for us here very well. This slide here, let me quickly annotate through, and I show you where the issues that matter are. The issues that matter are here. They're saying that whenever you're running your hash values, this is what you need to always consider. One, it runs a hash. You run the hash, and remember in running the hash, we said you calculate the SHA, M and MD5. Once you run those two, you get the numbers. Then you do what? Do comparison. What are you comparing? You're comparing the values, the hash values that you will have picked with the original hash that is calculated. Then when the image is the same as with the first one you acquired, then it passes that test. So this particular rectangle box I'm trying to formulate here is exactly what shows how do we carry out our integrity test using whichever tool. We are not only limited. The most important thing is that it is the hash values that we are comparing. And that's what is very important for us. Okay, I see someone's battery is down and they're begging to leave. Sorry about that. We will still share our recordings kindly and see as well. Okay. We make use of advanced hexadecimal editors to ensure that data integrity is further checked. Hexadecimals will check beyond even the binary to ensure that we didn't just go and add in some extra items on our own. So how do we handle validation using hexadecimal editors? We use advanced hexadecimal editors. These offer features that are not available in OS Forensics and other forensic tools in catering for that. So such hashing specific files or sectors are included and can easily be found within these hexa editors. So with a hash value in hand, you can use a forensic tool to search for a suspicious file that may have had its name changed to look like it's an anonymous or inconspicuous file or an innocuous file, a file that is just appearing for the first time, appearing as if it's something that someone has concocted over time. We usually use WinHex. WinHex, if you still recall and do have that other virtual tool that we shared on the hard disk drives, WinHex provides for SHA1 and MD5 hashing algorithms. So when you're validating our hexadecimal editors, this is how it does it and opens it for us within the hexadecimal editors. And what does it do? It gives us the actual results within the hexadecimal files, as we can be able to see. Of course, the numbers are always in zeros to ones. In addition, they also go on all the way to A's up to F, G, H, up to Z. Those are the hexadecimal files. So all these are what the WinHex will help us to read. And there are more specialized tools, by the way, that can convert these hexadecimal readings. They convert them to English so that you're not trying to forge around and fake around as if you know how to read these zeros and ones and numbers. No, they change them for us into values that we can quickly make sense of. And that is it for us, is to interpret it. So here they're giving us part of the steps when they are validating with the hexadecimal editors. They're saying, yes, we check for the MD5, that's one we've seen for the hash values. And of course, we also look for the SHA1. This is the MD5 hash value. Then you are always comparing before and after to see that, yes, nothing has changed on this item as well. So when you're validating these hexadecimal editors, the advantages are of recording our hash values. You can determine where the data has changed, and we've seen even the tools like RegShort that can help us to see that comparison even clearer. Blockwise hashing is another way that helps us to do the validation. What is it? It's a process that builds, by the way, what question do we set here? We'll always ask you, what are some of the ways in which we validate hexadecimal values? So it's up to you to pick them up, and they're always small marks that are attached, 5 or 6, but you know, it is one by one that makes a bundle. So don't eliminate any of these items. If you're going to spot, please do not spot any of these papers. Make sure that you are properly read. So blockwise hashing is a process that builds a data set of hashes of sectors from the original file. It then determines the sectors of the suspect's drive to see whether any other sectors match. So if an identical hash value is found, you have confirmed that the file was now stored on the suspect's drive. So blockwise hashing is one of those that we use. So we can also use the hash values in the discriminator, in discriminate data. In discriminate data, we can use a tool, for example, Access Data. Access Data has its own hashing database. Its own database is called the KFF, that is known file filter. The known file filters are known program files from view, and they also contains hash values that are known as illegal files. So it's able to help us to determine those which are legal, those ones which are illegal. It compares the known file hash values with the files on the evidence drive to see if they contain any suspicious data. Once our digital forensic tools can import this to the NSRL, that's the library database, and run these hash comparisons. Of course, that one is readily available, and there are several tools. Again, the other tools like ProDiscover, as we saw, ProDiscover also has the .eve files that contain metadata. These include the hash values that have a preference that you can enable to use the auto verification of image checksums. Checksums deal with hash values, they're exactly one and the same thing. What are you checking? You are only trying to check the MD5, you're checking the hash values. These are valuable components that add value, that make a difference in checking the integrity. And now we are seeing even these are part of the hexadecimal editors. So ProDiscover equally has tools that can help us to do that. Depending on the formats, they're saying the raw format images don't contain metadata. Yes, that one we saw. And that's why when you're creating your image, depending on what images you create, you'd want to add more detail and check for many more items. So you must validate them manually to ensure integrity. If you're using the Access Data Forensic Toolkit Imager, when selecting the expert witness, that's the .E01. We saw this when we were looking at the different types of images to create, or the smart format. Additional options for validations are also available. And of course, validation reports appear with our list of MD5s and SHA1 values, which we compare to see, was there anything that changed? Is there something that we can be able to take control over? Of course, here they're giving us again steps that if you're using some other tool, this is using, they're using ProDiscover to check for the MD5s under validation. So all forensic tools, as seen, basically are always testing for integrity and testing for validation. Why? You may analyze tools which are not there, and that becomes a big challenge. We go on. The last part is about data hiding. Data hiding has several techniques. However, we want to start by defining it. Data hiding is defined as the change or manipulation of a file to conceal information. First of all, why do we hide data? That means we want to conceal information, maybe for a good reason or a bad reason. Maybe we're trying to keep it away from particular users. We're trying to keep it away from particular people. Imagine if it's URA coming to your organization. Many people are always, actually not even, or every time they work, they're forever concealing and hiding, because you never know when they will come with the forensic experts and they take people on. By the way, URA is forever recruiting these forensic experts. What you need is your bachelor's degree. And of course, thereafter, they need some more certifications to help one handle some of these details. So there are some techniques that we use for data hiding that we will always ask you. Expect that question every time. Define data hiding and describe any of, we'll give you maybe any 2 or any 3 or any 4 of the data hiding techniques. Here we're looking at 6. We're giving you 6 data hiding techniques. So the worst comes to the worst, at least you should know at least 4 of these data hiding techniques, and the notes are all inside here. 1, we have hiding the entire partition. You can choose to hide the entire drive, whether it is CD, the entire hard disk. That is one of the options that you can have. 2, you can decide to change our file extension. We can change our file extensions. If it is a .doc, we can change it to maybe a .bitmap, BMP, just to hide it. It is an Excel sheet. We change it to maybe something else. Why? You just want to camouflage the extension so that when someone comes to look for it, you frustrate them. We will look at the notes thereafter. 3, setting file attributes to hidden. When you right click a folder or a file, you select hide. That means only once you hide it in its attributes, that is it. You can't see this file anymore. So setting our file attributes to hidden will always change it to hiding it as well. The 3rd data technique is using bit shifting. Once you shift a few bits from one place to the other around, the file will be distorted and you can't open it again. 5, using encryption. That one we already know. Once you change it using a particular language, the issue is settled. You can't find it until you go and pick that exact decryption tool to be able to read that text. And 6 is setting password protections. Once you set your passwords, you are also in position to hide all your files, all your valuable items. So number 1, you want to look at hiding files by using the operating system. You can hide it using the operating system, and that's what we said in changing our file extensions. Here we are advanced digital forensic tools. Always check for file headers. They compare the file extension to verify that it's correct. If there is a discrepancy within the headers, then the tool flags that the files as a possible altered file. That is one of the things that forensic tools help us to get. Another hiding technique is selecting the hide attribute in the file properties dialog box. And of course, we will see how to do some of this quickly. In hiding partitions, they're giving us some clues here. We can use, for example, if you're in Windows, you can use that term disk part remove later command. You know, like when you go into the other way, you have drive C, drive D, E, F. One can just decide to hide it and say it's supposed to be D. You go and hide it and no one will see that partition, yet it's there. It is a hidden partition by just removing the disk part letter, which is either C, D, or E, whichever letter it is. To unhide it, they're telling us, or they're saying you can unassign the partition letter, which hides it by clicking view within the file explorer. This one will help us to quickly get our files or see which one is hidden. And those ones also call them unallocated files, if you still recall very well from our previous done test. So to unhide, we use disk part assign letters command. Other disk management tools like Partition Magic, Partition Master, Linux Grand, Unified Bootloader, that's the grub, can help us as one of these disk management tools to unhide these letters from our disks. To detect whether partition has been hidden, we need to first of all account for all the disk space when examining an evidence drive. For example, if they tell you, my hard disk is maybe 500 GB or 250 GB, that means I need to first of all, when I right click, I select properties, I should see the space. When I see the capacity that yes, it's 250, I'm like, yes, but if it is 120 GB, I make the mathematics and I know, no, there is, I said, just forget about, we won't even alert you. We'll just say it's okay because you know that your forensic tool is going to pick up on this hidden space. So if you're using a tool like ProDiscover, a hidden partition appears at the highest level drive set in the BIOS. So if it is hidden, it will come first as C. Then all the others will now appear as the other item. So depending on what tool you are using, you will always get these hidden files. So they're just giving us an illustration if they're using ProDiscover to pick up and see what are the partitions. Look at this one, for example. They're just examining the disk space. We have a disk 0 that has this space. This is a healthy disk, a recovery partition of 18 GB. We see an NTFS, we have our gateway. Yes, disk 2 is this, disk 3 is this. So you add them and see how many do you have. The moment they don't come to the total amount of size you have, then you start knowing that they are missing components. But still, even before you do that, quickly run through your tool, attach it, and you will see in the analysis phase, it's part of the things that happens. In the analysis, we've seen we do the validation, which includes both testing for integrity and its verification now, as well as data hiding if there are any partitions that are hidden for them to appear. The other one is that sometimes they are bad sectors. You need to mark some of these bad sectors. A data hiding technique used usually in FAT file systems is placing sensitivity on incriminating data in free or slack space. Slack space is that empty space on a disk partition cluster. It involves using some old utilities such as Norton Disk Edit. It can mark good clusters as bad ones in FAT so that the operating system considers them unusable. Sometimes even where you're trying to hide your information, you just mark them as bad clusters. All these are ways of hiding them. However, they're telling us that using forensic tools, it will always bring these hidden files or hidden sectors as the most important ones. Next is the bit shifting. Bit shifting, here we are seeing that some users use low-level encryption programs that change the order of the binary data, and it makes the altered data unreadable. So to secure a file, the users run as an assembler program that is also known as a macro, just to scramble our bits. We run another program to restore the scrambled bits to their original order. So bit shifting changes data from readable code to data that looks like binary executable code. WinHex always includes a feature for shifting our bits. In terms of, it helps us to quickly recover these bits that we have. They're giving us an example. Look at some of these bits that a file would have. And it's very easy for someone to quickly just go through, edit and delete. And before you know it, the information is no longer as it is distorted. So in such WinHex files that we use in analysis and validation, it's when we also use that time to restore and open these bits that were deleted, parts and important bits of the information, such that they were trying to hide them, we make them available. And of course, this tool here is trying to show us how they are trying to do some of these modifications of the block data using Xway AG. That's from xway.net. Data hiding, we shall use one of the tools, one of the free tools, that is XIAO. Whether it's, yeah, well, I don't know how they pronounce it really. I would want to keep it as XAIO. Yes, XIAO. Because I remember one time we had, but it's a Chinese tool. We had one professor who was visiting when we were in school, and he was called Professor Shu. The pronunciation in Chinese was, in English, was XU. So they pronounce Shu as XU, yet for us, I don't know what we'd call it. I don't know how would even pronounce that XU. So XIAO is the steganography tool. We shall see how do we use it to encrypt and decrypt our information. Okay. Understanding steganalysis tools. So steganalysis, as we've seen, the word steganography. Steganography comes from the Greek word that means hidden writing. So steganography is the hiding of messages in such a way that only the intended recipients know the message inside there. So what does steganography help us to do? To just hide messages so that you want to send it to someone, the person receives it, decrypts it, reads it, and is able to take action. So steganalysis is the process or term used for detecting and analyzing the steganography files, those which have been hidden. So we use some digital marking, for example, that are developed as a way to protect file ownership. Usually it's not visible when being used in steganography. So they use what they term as digital watermarks within the steganography process. As a way to hide data, they make use of steganography tools. Many of these steganography tools are free. They are freeware, and also some of them are shareware. So we insert information into a variety of files. If you encrypt a plain text file with a JP, a PJ, a PJP, and insert an encrypted text into a steganography file, then cracking the encrypted text is extremely difficult because you've merged two components, and we shall look at it. We shall also use steganography files that we've seen, tools to hide some information. We may want to send an email, but because it contains information like a bank account and a password, we say, no way, we can never send this information. So what do? We use some steganography tools. We can decide to send it as an image. For you, you receive an image, you're like, no, I'm not expecting an image, but not knowing that behind the image, we have encrypted the actual wordings of that account that we need. So it's tough for you to figure it out if you're a perpetuator, unless you're part of the entire team that will guide you as to where and how do you manage these steganography items. We have a number of steganalysis tools, and that's why we always ask you again in exams, we always ask you even in tests to give us, describe or discuss or explain some steganalysis tools. Here we have the stegno-only attack, we have the non-cover attack, non-message attack, chosen stego attack, we have the chosen message attack. There are several of these 5 available methods that we can use. So when examining encrypted files, it's important for us to always decode an encrypted file. The users will always supply a password or a passphrase. Many encryption programs use a technology known as escroll to help us manage this kind of passwords. So this escroll basically helps us in containing this information that we are going to have within our hidden files. escroll is designed to recover encrypted data if users forgot their passphrases, or if the user key is corrupted after the system fails. It's when escroll comes in handily to help us decrypt or pick up on any of these phrases that have been hidden and deleted. So that's telling us that it uses some size of the keys that are 180 bits to up to 4,906 bits, 4,096 bits, while that makes them easy when breaking them to nearly impossible with the current technology. The more the keys, the more tough. I don't know if you've ever looked at a safe. A safe you can decide to set it to lock 25 times round or clockwise, then go backwards 3 times, come forward 5 times, go back again 20 times, come forward 100 times. All those are ways. What are you trying to do? You're trying to confuse the person who wants to steal something from your safe by making sure you put very strong keys. So they're telling us here, if you want very strong keys that are going to help us to encrypt this data, put like up to 4,096 bits of keys. I'm telling you that one will spend nearly an entire lifetime to decrypt as compared to one which is just 128 or 64 bits. That one can easily be decoded and broken. So when recovering a password, we use password cracking tools. These are always available and handy in carrying out password protection of our data and systems. They're giving us an example of some of the standalone tools that can help us in recovering these passwords. Tools like the last bit, access data, PR, that's for password recovery toolkit. It's also another open source toolkit that one can use. We have the OPH crack, we have the John, the Reaper, we have Passware. Yes, we already saw how to use one of the passwords in recovering passwords, especially from the websites. That one we looked at it already. Some passwords are very tough. We need to use some brute force attacks in order to guess and get these tables. We can also use the dictionary attacks. These ones also help us in recovering passwords. They may take a little longer, but it's okay. We shall finally still reach there. So we use every possible letter in the brute force attacks, any possible number. Basically, look at your keyboard, any possible character on your keyboard. This method requires a lot of time and processing power for you to recover what password was there. That's why they always ask you for hints. So that in case you know it or you wanted to or you've forgotten it, you should be able to pick out on some of these hints. But of course, if it's for hardcore criminals, people who are not paying taxes, you have to use these password recovery tools automatically to bypass these passwords and to break them. So you need to always have these brute force tools and of course, dictionary attacks. Dictionary attacks, what do they use? They use some common words found in the dictionary and try them as passwords. But what do they guess them from? They'll always ask you, what are your names? What is your name? What they try to ask you some mega questions, your phone number, so that it is around there that they start figuring out what your passwords are. Children's names, relatives' names, parents' names. They start forging around and they use these dictionary attacks to keep guessing different numbers that would have. Okay, so with many programs, you can build profiles of a suspect to help determine his or her password, and many password protected operating systems and applications always store passwords in form of D, MD5s, and SHA-1 values. So a brute force attack requires one to convert a dictionary password from a plain text to a hash value, which is required within our CPU time. So as we've mentioned, there are several ways in which you can always decrypt and pick this information. We can also use rainbow tables. You can also use sorting passwords. In rainbow tables, here they're saying that a file contains the hash value for each possible password that can be generated from a computer keyboard. So no conversion is necessary. So it is faster than a brute force or a dictionary attack for us to quickly recover this information using a rainbow table. Sorting is usually used for hash values. We usually alter hash values by making cracking passwords more difficult. So sorting passwords helps us as well. In summary of this chapter, we have seen how can we examine and analyze our digital evidence, which depends on the nature of investigation and the amount of data we process. We've also seen that wiping and preparing target files, we looked at the procedures of digital forensics, and we said that they're not any different from our steps. One, we said we always have to carry out investigation. And we saw under investigation what is carried out. Then, oh, sorry, not investigation, identification. Identifying what items are needed, doing the planning, coming up with your files, coming up with your toolkit that has all your forensic documents, forensic equipment that you would need to carry out all your items. And of course, once you've done that, now you can start your acquisition process. Then after the acquisition, we now upload, we mount our image, and now we should be in position to carry out the analysis. So today's class was looking at the analysis and data hiding and its validation. We looked at some of the digital forensic tools, and we say that if you're looking at OS forensics, for example, We look at indexing. Indexing is what helps us to do our searches even faster in picking out our items. So a critical aspect of digital forensics is validating our digital evidence. So ensuring the integrity of data you collect is essential for presenting evidence in court. And we said, you'll keep on collecting this integrity at all times. Don't get tired and say, oh, I checked once, why are you telling me to check again? No. Data hiding involves changing or manipulating a file to conceal our information. And we've seen all the different ways in which we can conceal our data. And also, we've seen also steganography, what it entails. These are use of tools to be able to hide these files. We've also seen that the steganalysis, the process of being able to identify these files again. There are different password recovery tools, and we've said some of them include our dictionary attacks, brute force attacks, rainbow attacks, and several other encryption attacks to help us pick out on these passwords. So that is it. Please, we are going to have our session on Friday at 2 for both classes, such that we are able to see how we are using these particular files accordingly. Okay, so let's have ourselves a nice evening, and thank you so much for logging in. I see we're only 24 that logged in, and yet our class in the exams were about 130 that sat for exams. So there's a big group of people that are not attending class. I don't know, do we have reasons as to why people are not attending? Teddy, do you have some information?